are you genius or not? Only like one person is going to ace this test. This is one of the hardest tests that we have. It's about US history, about the founding of United States. There are 5 blocks and 9 questions in each, different types of questions. So if you want to answer the questions, you can, or otherwise you can just sleep or listen to the questions and learn something and be the smartest one in the room. So let's start. Question: which Rhode Island incident involved colonists boarding, looting and burning a grounded British custom schooner in 1772? It was A, the Gaspee Affair, B, the Caroline Affair, C, the Liberty Riot, or D, the Regulator Movement. So which Rhode Island incident involved colonists boarding, looting and burning a grounded British customs schooner, ship? The Gaspee Affair, the Caroline Affair, the Liberty Riot, or the Regulator Movement? And it was the Gaspee Affair. The Gaspee Affair escalated tensions. Britain responded with a special commission to investigate, extradite suspects, and colonial backlash helped spur wider intercolonial coordination, including committees of correspondence. Interesting. Next. How many civilians were killed in the Boston massacre? And you guess over or under. So 8. I'm saying 8 and you have to guess if it's more or less. So how many civilians were killed in the Boston massacre? And it was under. It was 5 civilians. 3 died that night, 1 died the next day, and 1 died about 2 weeks later from wounds. Next one. What term describes the British policy of avoiding strict enforcement of parliamentary laws in the colonies, which ended after the French and Indian War? What term describes the British policy of avoiding strict enforcement of parliamentary laws in the colonies, which ended after the French and Indian War? And it was salutary neglect. Salutary neglect. Okay, next one. Which set of punitive laws was passed by Parliament specifically to punish Massachusetts for the Boston Tea Party? Which set of punitive laws was passed by Parliament specifically to punish Massachusetts for the Boston Tea Party? It was the Townshend Act, the Coercive Act, the Navigation Acts, the Stamp Acts. So the Townshend Acts, the Coercive Acts, the Navigation Acts, or the Stamp Acts. And it was the Coercive Acts. Colonists commonly referred to these punitive 1774 measures as the Intolerable Acts. Interesting. Next question. Sort these British acts by the order they were passed, earliest to latest. So, Townshend Acts, Sugar Act, Intolerable Acts, Stamp Acts. intolerable or the coercive acts we talked about. So tangent acts, sugar acts, intolerable acts, or step acts. And it's BTAC. So Sugar Act 1764, Stamp 1765, Townshend 1767, and Coercive Measures Intolerable Acts 1774. Now I will tell you 4 figures and their quotes, and you have to match them. So we have James Otis. You have to remember that James Otis, John Dickinson, Crispus Attucks, and Patrick Henry. So James Otis, John Dickinson, Crispus Attucks, and Patrick Henry. And we have number 1, letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania. Or this is not quotes, that is quote. Give me liberty or give me death. Who said that? First casualty of Boston massacre. And taxation without a representation is tyranny. So 2 acts, let's say, and 2 quotes. So letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania. Give me liberty or give me death. First casualty of Boston massacre. What's the first casualty of Boston massacre? Taxation without representation is tyranny. And the right answers are James Otis, taxation without representation is tyranny. B. John Dickinson, letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania. C. Crispus Attucks is the first casualty of Boston massacre. And Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. The exact wording of the James Otis quote varies by source, but he strongly popularized the argument against taxation without representation. Next one. You have to guess a person. Nobody's going to guess this. This is super. I know it's very difficult, but you want a challenge. I was a physician and political leader. I authored the Suffolk Resolves. I was killed in action at the Battle of Bunker Hill while serving as a private despite being a general. So he served as a private despite being a general. He was with the boys. So I was a physician and political leader. I authored the Suffolk Resolves. I was killed in action at the Battle of Bunker Hill while serving as a private despite being a general. And the name is Joseph Warren. Joseph Warren. Next one. In which Philadelphia building did the First Continental Congress convene in 1774? In which Philadelphia building did the First Continental Congress convene in 1774? And it was in Carpenter's Hall. Interesting. They chose this over the State House to avoid the appearance of being too loyalist. Good call. And now we have the last one. Identify the intruder. This is which of these was not a component of the intolerable coercive acts? A. Boston Port Act. B. Quartering Act. C. Quebec Act. And D. Molasses Act. Molasses. So which wasn't in coercive acts? Boston Port Act, Quartering Act, Quebec Act, or Molasses Act? And which wasn't is the Molasses Act. The Molasses Act was passed much earlier, 1743. The Quebec Act was often grouped with the Interlarp Acts by colonists, but it wasn't one of the 4 coercive acts aimed directly at Massachusetts. But yeah, so it could be, if you are very picky, it could be too. We have the next, the before the bloc was pre-revolutionary unrest. Now we have the Constitution, and this one is a little bit easier. Who proposed the Connecticut Compromise, or the Great Compromise, which created the bicameral legislature structure we use today? So who proposed the Connecticut Compromise, the Great Compromise? It was A. William Patterson, B. Roger Sherman, C. Edmund Randolph, or D. Governor Morris. So it was A. William Patterson, B. Roger Sherman, C. Edmund Randolph, or D. Governor Morris. And it was Roger Sherman. The compromise is most closely associated with Roger Sherman, often alongside fellow Connecticut delegate Oliver Ellsworth. A house based on a population and Senate with equal votes per state. That's how it's today. Next. Yeah, I'm saying number again. The number of delegates who signed the US Constitution was over or under 42. Was it over 42 or under 42? Or I should say like 42.5. So was it? It wasn't 42. Was it 43 or more, or 41 or less? So how many number of delegates signed the US Constitution? Somebody knows that. Somebody knows. Exactly, somebody knows. There is somebody with this special kind of autism that knows all of their names. And it was 39 delegates who signed the final documents. Under what collective pseudonym did Alexander Hamilton, my name is Alexander Hamilton, James Madison and John Jay publish the Federalist Papers? Under what collective pseudonym did they do this? And it was Publius. Interesting, isn't it? Next one. Which was the only state that boycotted the Constitutional Convention of 1787 entirely? So which state boycotted the Constitutional Convention of 1787? A. Rhode Island. A. Rhode Island. B. North Carolina. C. New York. Or D. Georgia. So Rhode Island, North Carolina, New York, or Georgia. And it was Rhode Island. They feared a strong central government would damage their economy. Then now, sorting. Sort these states by the order in which they ratified the Constitution, first to last. So, no, that's obvious. So we have A. New Hampshire, B. Delaware, C. Rhode Island, and D. Pennsylvania. So New Hampshire, Delaware, Rhode Island, or Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania, and now you have to sort them from who ratified first and who ratified last. And it was first was Delaware, then Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island last. Yeah, they didn't even go to the convention. So Delaware was first, Pennsylvania 2nd, New Hampshire was 9th, and Rhode Island was last of the original 13. Now, match the article of the Constitution to its topic, and we have Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3, and Article 4. And we have 1. The judicial branch, 2. The amendment process, 3. The legislative branch, and 4. The executive branch. This one is kind of easy. Like, you have to think what's the most important, and then you go by that. So Article 1 is the legislative branch, legislation. Article 2 is the executive branch, who will execute those things that they legislated. Article 3 is the judicial branch. If somebody needs to control them, and they have that special, like, I think, executive branch, so president appoints judiciary, but the legislative branch, which has parliament and senate, needs to approve them, which is like they are in check, in the gridlock. And the last one, the Article 5, I said 4, I meant 5, sorry, Article 5 is the amendment process, the amendment. Yes. So now you guess something from the Constitution of USA. I'm a specific clause in the Constitution. I grant Congress implied powers beyond those explicitly listed. I'm often called the elastic clause. What's the name? You will not know that. I don't know that. The necessary and proper clause. The necessary and proper clause. They thought about everything. Next one. What name is given to the compromise that determined how enslaved person would be counted for taxation and representation? So what name is given to the compromise that determined how enslaved persons would be counted for taxation and representation? You know that they cite it all the time, like it's the 3/5 compromise. So you were like 3/5, so a little bit more than half a person, which must be like somebody who is like scholar or American must be interested how they came to that, like the rationalization, because what was that, Republicans back then, like today's Republicans, they like fought for it very hard. If you see, they like, because slavery was very common everywhere. Like, I'm Slavic, so it comes from that. It comes from that name. So how they had to like negotiate with that. And anyway, which of these men was a Federalist? A. Patrick Henry, B. George Mason, C. James Madison, and D. Richard Henry Lee. Yeah, Federalist, there wasn't like those parties, but you know what I mean. Patrick Henry, George Mason, James Madison, or Richard Henry Lee. So who was Federalist and the rest was anti-Federalist? So it was James Madison was Federalist. The others were anti-Federalist who opposed ratification without a Bill of Rights. Next one, we have war and strategy. Which Prussian military officer is credited with training the Continental Army at Valley Forge, transforming them into professional fighting force? So, Prussian military officer, Prussians gave them one. So, it was A. Marquis de Lafayette, that one was like big. B. Baron von Stauben. C. Comte de Rachambeau, or D. Casimir Pulaski. Marquis de Lafayette, Baron von Stauben, Comte de Rachenbach, or the Casimir Polanski. And it was Baron von Stauben. He introduced standard drills and improved camp discipline and sanitation. That definitely helped. The year the siege of Yorktown ended was over or under 1780.5. So was it 1780.1 or 2? Was it or more? So was it over or under? And it was over. It was actually Cornwallis surrendered in October 1781. So it was right above. What nickname was given to the German auxiliary troops hired by the British Crown to fight against the colonists? What nickname was given to the German auxiliary troops hired by the British Crown to fight against the colonists? And it was Hessians. Interesting. Which British general surrendered his entire army at the Battle of Saratoga, marking the turning point of the war? So which British general surrendered his entire army at the Battle of Saratoga? And it was A. William Howe, B. Henry Clinton, C. John Burgoyne, or D. Charles Cornwallis. William Howe, Henry Clinton, John Burgoyne, or D. Charles Cornwallis. And it was John Burgoyne. He surrendered to help persuade France to openly enter the war as an American ally. Sort these battles by chronological order, earliest to latest, and we have Battle of Yorktown, Battle of Bunker Hill, Battle of Saratoga, and Battle of Trenton. So I will let you think. So Yorktown, Bunker Hill, Saratoga, and Trenton. And it was Bunker Hill, Trenton, Saratoga, and Yorktown. Bunker Hill was 1775, Trenton was 1776, Saratoga was 1777, and Yorktown was 1781. And now we have matching again. So match this figure to their nickname or title. So we have Francis Marion, Anthony Wayne, John Paul Jones, and George Washington. And the nicknames are Father of the American Navy. 2 is the Swamp Fox. The Swamp Fox. 3 was Mad Anthony. And 4 was Commander-in-Chief. So nicknames: Francis Marion, Anthony Wayne, John Paul Jones, and George Washington. And the right answer is Francis Marion was the Swamp Fox. Anthony Wayne was the Mad Anthony, which this one was easy. John Paul Jones was Father of the American Navy, and George Washington, of course, was the Commander-in-Chief. John Paul Jones is often called the Father of American Navy, but the title is debated. John Perry is another common candidate. Question. Now you are guessing from the hints. You will not know that. I was an American general who won key battles early in the war. I felt passed over for promotion and undervalued. My name is now synonymous with traitor. I was an American general who won key battles early in the war. I felt passed over for promotion and undervalued. My name is now synonymous with traitor. You will maybe know that I know this one. I heard it at least. Benedict Arnold. At which winter, this is an open-ended question, at which winter encampment in Pennsylvania did roughly 1,700 to 2,000 continental soldiers die, mostly from disease in 1777 to 1778? So in which, this one you know too, this one is easy. So in Pennsylvania, which winter encampment it was Valley Forge. This was the main killer: shortages, exposure, and poor sanitation worsened outcomes. And the last question in this block: which of these battles was a British victory? I will tell you four, and only one was won by British. So, Battle of Long Island, Battle of Trenton, Battle of Princeton, and Battle of Cowpens. Battle of Long Island, Battle of Trenton, Battle of Princeton, and Battle of Cowpens. And it was Battle of Long Island. Battle of Long Island. Next, the declaration, the declaration. Which president of the Continental Congress was the first to sign the Declaration of Independence using a very large signature? So which president of the Continental Congress was the first to sign the Declaration of Independence using a very large signature? It was A. John Adams, B. Thomas Jefferson, C. John Hancock, and D. Benjamin Franklin. So what signature is very big? On Declaration of Independence, and is John Hancock. He signed first as a president of Congress on the engrossed copy. The "So King George could read it without spectacles" line is a later legend. What was the number of grievances listed against the king in the declaration? Was it over or under 15.5? So was it over 16 or more, or 14 or less? So how many over or under? This is very easy to guess. It was over. It was 27 specific grievances against the king in the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, they didn't like the British. Who's the primary author of the Declaration of Independence? This is easy. Who's the primary author? If you watched I love watching these educational videos on YouTube. I do it all the time. That's why I do this. It's very interesting to listen and learn something, And it was Thomas Jefferson. Next one. In which city was the Declaration of Independence signed? In which city was the Declaration of Independence signed? And it was New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, or Washington, D.C. So in which city was the Declaration of Independence signed? New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, or Washington, D.C. And it was in Philadelphia, at the Pennsylvania State House, now Independence Hall. So these events regarding independence, earliest to latest. The Lee Resolution is proposed, the Olive Branch Petition, the Declaration is signed, the vote for independence. So how they went: the Lee Resolution is proposed, the Olive Branch Petition, the Declaration is signed, the vote for independence. And it is the Olive Branch Petition 1775, Lee Resolution proposed June 1776, vote for independence July 2nd, and signing August the 2nd. So it took some time. Now match the founder to their description. So we have Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, Alexander Hamilton, and George Washington. So one wrote common sense. Oldest signer of Declaration, aide the camp to Washington, and president over Constitutional Convention. So you know some you already know. So wrote common sense, oldest signer of Declaration, aide the camp to Washington, and president over Constitutional Convention. And Benjamin Franklin was oldest signer of the Declaration. Thomas Paine wrote common sense. Alexander Hamilton aide the camp to Washington, and George Washington president over Constitutional Convention. So, I am a founding father from Massachusetts, you guess by these hints. I defended the British soldiers after the Boston Massacre. I was the first vice president of the USA. So first vice president, and it's John Adams. The Declaration states that all men are endowed with free, unalienable rights, life, liberty, and what? Oh, this is easy. So what? Free, unalienable rights. They are not alien. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. Which of these founding fathers did not sign the Declaration of Independence? So Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin. So who didn't sign the Declaration? So who didn't sign? That's interesting. And it wasn't the George Washington, because he was commanding the Continental Army at the time. He wasn't he was fighting. So he was not delegated to Congress, And now we have, I think, last symbols and basics. According to popular legend, who sewed the first American flag at the request of George Washington, who sewed the first American flag? It was A. Martha Washington, B. Abigail Adams, C. Betsy Ross, or D. Dolly Madison. So who sewed the first American flag? It looked very different back then, but then it does now, and it was Betsy Ross. You can find it. We should do a short about that. So number of colonies that declared independence. How many colonies declared independence? Was it over or under 12.5? So was it 13 or more, or 11 or less? The first 13 colonies. This one is the easiest round to wind you down, and it was 13 colonies, of course. What iconic symbol of American independence located in Philadelphia cracked the first time it was rung? That's you know that. So what cracked the first time it was rung? The symbol of independence. And it was the Liberty Bell. The original 1752 State House bell cracked on its first test ring and was recast twice by Bass and Stowe. The famous crack that silenced the bell was later worsened in 1846. What type of beverage was destroyed during a famous 1773 protest in Boston Harbor? So it was A. Coffee, B. Wine, C. Tea, or D. Whiskey. So what beverage was destroyed during a famous 1773 protest in Boston Harbor. It was, of course, the Boston Tea Party. So these US presidents, by what they served, or when they served, and not what they served everything. So A. Thomas Jefferson, B. George Washington, C. John Adams, and D. James Madison. So sort them by order. Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, John Adams, and D. James Madison. And it was George Washington, then John Adams, then Thomas Jefferson, and then James Madison. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. Yeah, it rhymes. Match the patriot to the legend or event. So we have Paul Revere, Patrick Henry, Nathan Hale, and George Washington. Those four we have. And now, I only regret that I have but one life to lose. I only regret that I have but one life to lose. To the midnight ride, 3. Chopping down a cherry tree, and 4. Liberty or death speech. So we already had that one. So A is the Paul Revere, is the midnight ride. Patrick Henry is the liberty or death, give me liberty or give me death speech. C. Nathan Hale is I only regret that I have but one life. And George Washington is the chopping of the cherry tree. That's known, that's like legend. Now, I'm the first president of the United States. I am the face on the $1 bill, and I lived at Mount Vernon. I'm the first president of the United States. That's very easy. I'm the face on $1 bill, and I lived at Mount Vernon, and that's George Washington, of course. What name was given to the colonial militia members who claimed they could be ready to fight in 60 seconds? They were ready to fight in 60 seconds. If you played Fallout, you heard about them. And that was called Minutemen. And the last question, the odd one out. Which of these was not one of the original 13 colonies? A. Vermont, B. Georgia, C. New York, and D. Virginia. Vermont, Georgia, New York, or Virginia. Virginia. And it was Vermont because Vermont was independent. It was 40th state in 1791. So that's all. If you knew everything, you are very smart. If you didn't, that's okay. You can sleep. And if you are not sleeping yet, you can watch my other content that is right now on the screen. Thank you for watching. Good night.